began, we've added in our organizing team people from a number of different faiths. And I mentioned the workshop. These are the three beliefs that we all agreed on. Love thy neighbor, care for the poor, and stewardship of creation. Or if we were talking to a humanist, we would say stewardship of the planet and all of its beings. Many of the participants were members of what are traditionally thought of as conservative religions. Yet there they were, all agreeing that in at least those three areas we could work together. We UUs have been getting involved at an amazing rate. We have almost 800 likes on our Move to Amend Unitarian Universalist Facebook page, and a growing number of people from other faith communities on the Move to Amend Interfaith cause. Remember when I said something about ALEC? We have made the big time. ALEC has noticed us. The American Legislative Exchange Council needs you. This is a letter to their members. Professional activists ranging from common cause to the Unitarian Universalist Church just won't stop. As part of their misleading smear campaign, these activist groups demand members stop working with ALEC. Now we are standing up. That's the first time I've heard this mentioned on a national frame, so the opportunity is huge. But one community can't do it on its own. We need to reach out. So, if we look at our areas of society and the environment where only these three values violated, we have enough to motivate just about everybody, every person of faith and ethical values in the world. We can reach out to other communities at local, state, and national levels, and together, as the coalition grows to millions, we could well become the most influential force in this movement. What are the obstacles? Each one of us who says, we can't do that, the government won't let us. It'll take too long. Women's suffrage took 75 years. My response to all of those is, we can't not do it. We've just gotten used to thinking we are powerless, but when we feel that way, we must remember that we are the government when we decide to be in charge again. And I took a note from what Representative Nikki Antonio said. If we have powerful people behind us, we are unstoppable. And that is the simple truth. If the people get behind us, it is unstoppable, because we are supreme. But it takes not just saying, oh yeah, that's good what you're doing, keep doing it. It takes people saying, you know, you're right, we've got to do this, let's do it. So, we started this, but we can't do it on our own. Let's talk about it. I'd like to pass the mic now to Susan, to actually Steve Palmhauser, who will talk about the 15 now minimum wage initiative, and then Susan will talk about fair food and council of mobility workers. The program they will speak about, they are all examples of economic injustice. And together we can make this happen for everybody. I say to people who are working hard on important elements, important activities, that are their number one priorities, keep doing it. It's great. At some point, you're going to run your head against the brick wall of corporate personhood. And when that happens, Move to Amend your number 2. And let's all get together and make a constitutional amendment happen that will restore, if we've ever had it, democracy and move us forward into a new society.
We talk about climate change and the problems that it gives to us, but climate change is not going to change until we get corporations out of the Constitution, because it's the oil, gas, and coal companies that would die if we started to develop alternative fuels and renewable energy as a major part of our economy. And why is that? Because the carbon companies depend on cash flow, ongoing sales of their products, day after day, week after week, month after month. If we get to the point where we are installing sufficient solar and wind and geothermal and other energy to take care of most of our requirements, what happens when you install one of those things? Once it's running, there's no cash flow. The hydrocarbon companies can't afford that. They can't let that go. That's why there's such a strong movement from that industry against replacing oil with alternative and renewable fuels.
I'm the one who difference, yes, I will make the difference. Against all odds, I can live to share my love with others, oh yes, I will make the difference. I can make it, take my hand as we make this journey across the land.
Hi everybody, my name is Steve Palmhauser. I'm a graduate first UU, also involved in a national movement called 15 Now. It's a movement to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour on a municipal level. either through ballot initiatives or legislation put through by city councils. If you want to see what we're doing here locally in Columbus on this issue, if you Google 15 Now Columbus, you can see our Facebook page, our Twitter feed, and look at what we're doing there. Look at what Unitarian Universalists specifically are doing about this issue. It's a campaign by the UUSC called Wage Outrage. You know, one thing that seems to be the goal of wage outrage is to raise the minimum wage nationally to $10 an hour, which is the same thing that President Obama and also a couple of our state legislators in Ohio are asking for $10 an hour. Now, I would contend that that's a step in the right direction, but it's really not adequate for a few reasons. Economic inequality in the U.S. is the worst it's been since the 1920s, before the great stock market crash. One analysis of why the market crashed is that the middle class had eroded so much that the middle class had joined the ranks of the poor, that there weren't enough people to buy the goods and services that keep our stock market moving and healthy. That's one of the main reasons why the bottom fell out of that. Since 1968, it would now be $21.72. So asking for 15 an hour really it's really not quite adequate, but it's a better step in the right direction, I would argue. The average CEO salary is 328 times that of the average worker. I know a lot of you probably know these statistics. Most of those workers are not teenagers working at McDonald's for some extra spending money. Most low-wage workers in the restaurant and other service industries are adults who are working to support themselves, their families, and children. 2/3 of low-wage workers are women, and twice as many women as men work part-time without the benefits that go with full-time work. It's also a race issue. African and Latino Americans are disproportionately represented in service jobs. These groups are hard hit by unemployment. In Ohio, 50% of us live in poverty. Our poverty rate is higher than the national average. In terms of the national movement for $15 an hour, there's a couple of different areas. One is what's called the Fight for 15. And you've probably heard about this. It's been happening over the past couple of years with fast food workers. Wildcat strikes around the country. It's kind of quasi-union activity, but this is like direct action. Service workers going on strike for $15 an hour. And the 15 Now campaign is a little different from that, although we support 15 Now with more centered on municipal legislation to raise the minimum wage. And you probably heard that in Seattle in June raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Begins to take effect in January 2015. Kashama Sawan ran for the Seattle City Council on a platform raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And the fact that she won that election kind of forced the rest of City Council to take a stand on the issue, and also forced the mayor of Seattle to take a stand on the issue of raising the minimum wage. Seattle is listed pretty much all across the board, Democratic City Council and the mayor. Kashama didn't accept any corporate money. This is kind of harking back to Michael's talk. She didn't accept any corporate money for her campaign. She's also the first socialist candidate to be elected to public office in quite a few decades. 15 Now campaign around Seattle had basically three components. There were a lot of public actions out on the street. We also gathered a signature for a ballot initiative. If City Council didn't do something, there was a lot of movement toward getting signatures for a ballot initiative to make it a citizen's decision. That also, the fact that there was a ballot initiative also further pushed City Council to take a stand and do something about it. Things aren't perfect in Seattle. There were a lot of corporate loopholes in that legislation. And unfortunately, most of the corporate loopholes were pushed for by the Democrats in the City Council. For example, the minimum wages are going to instantly be $15 an hour for everybody in Seattle on January 1st. It's going to be phased in over 3 years. Corporations like Starbucks and McDonald's, they don't really need to have this phased in over 3 years. They have very deep pockets. They could well afford to start paying $15 an hour right now. But in order to get it through City Council, a lot of loopholes and compromises had to be made. Part of the problem is that most of the Democrats on Seattle City Council, they had to push for these loopholes because they are beholden to the corporate donations that they get to stay in office. Since then, There's been a lot of other movement in San Francisco, for example, in Chicago, to raise the minimum wage. Initiatives to raise the minimum wage at city level passed in several areas around the country. Here in Columbus, we have a very small group working on this right now, just around 10 people. There's also some interest on this in Cincinnati and Cleveland. I'd like to get some more information about this campaign, 15now.org.
It's the best summary of the Fair Food Program and the Fair Food Campaign that I've ever seen, written by Greg Asbeth and Sean Sellers, who are founders of the Fair Food Program with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. They've lived in Immokalee for 20 years. Sean runs the Fair Food Standards Council that investigates and monitors the operation of the Fair Food Program in the fields. And this really gives you everything you need to know about the Coalition of Immokalee Workers, amazing transformation of the agricultural industry in Florida. Things I want you to remember, there are some clips, some links to clips of CIW films.
We know our economy is stronger when we reward an honest day's work with honest wages. Let's declare that in the wealthiest nation on earth, no one who works full-time should have to live in poverty.
Everybody should be concerned with where our food comes from and who picks it.
To live hungry while you are working, that's not a dignified way of living.
The defendants have been accused of beating them, locking them inside trailers, chaining them to a pole. These abuses are un-American, they are unacceptable, and they must stop.
The history of farm labor in the United States is a history of exploitation.
These people have suffered tremendously and grown much more slowly economically than any other segment of our society.
If we cannot win this fight, we have lost the soul of America.
I think the entire supermarket business goes out of its way so that you're not reminded of where your food came from.
If you want to make change, you need to look at the people at the very top.
We became a little problem for the big corporations.
Farm workers in Florida place the responsibility of fair wages and conditions for workers on the big buyers of tomatoes rather than the farmers.
What we want is to establish change.
I still believe agriculture is the backbone of America. You've got to pay attention to the labor force.
Most people have no idea that they're connected to this system every time they buy fresh fruits and vegetables. If a handful of companies decided that they wanted to eliminate poverty among farm workers, it could happen very, very quickly.
For generations, farm work has been one of the lowest paid and least protected jobs in the country.
Los sueldos han caído en términos reales desde 1980, que provocó al Departamento de Labor de los Estados Unidos llamar a los trabajadores agrícolas una mano de obra en gran peligro económico.
90% of this country's winter tomatoes are grown right here in Florida each year. Farm workers have historically faced regular abuse in the fields, including wage theft, sexual violence, and in the most extreme cases, forced labor. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers, a human rights organization, is rewriting this history through its Fair Food Program, a groundbreaking model of social responsibility based on a unique partnership among farm workers, growers, and major retail brands. Its goal is to raise wages and affirm the dignity of workers in the fields.
Hoy el programa por comida justa ha empezado a transformar la industria y a proteger los derechos humanos fundamentales de los trabajadores.
Here's how it works. Buyers like Subway, McDonald's, and Walmart each pay growers a penny per pound premium on tomatoes, which growers pass on to their workers in the form of a bonus. More than $14 million in just 3 years. To participate, growers must adhere to the Fair Food Code of Conduct, which outlines workers' new rights under the program. Fair food farms ensure zero tolerance for forced labor. Prohibitions against verbal and physical abuse, including sexual harassment. Safe working conditions such as shade, clean restrooms, and drinking water. The right to report abuses without fear of retaliation, and a fair wage. The Fair Food Standards Council is a third-party monitor created to investigate complaints and ensure compliance through regular audits on the farms. The Fair Food Standards Council also staffs a 24-hour hotline for farm workers and helps them navigate a complaint resolution process whenever there's a problem on the farm.
Bajo el programa Por Comida Justa, la Coalición de Trabajadores de Immokalee conduce sesiones de educación de trabajador a trabajador para informar a los trabajadores de sus nuevos derechos y sus responsabilidades.
To enforce these standards, participating buyers commit to buying Florida tomatoes only from growers in good standing with the program.
Pero todavía hay trabajo que hacer para expandir esos cambios pioneros, más allá que la industria de tomate de Florida.
Your role is critical. You can help expand the Fair Food Program and eliminate human rights abuses in the fields.
Juntos podemos asegurar que el nuevo día amanecerá no solamente en Florida, sino por más de cientos de miles de trabajadores agrícolas en todo el país.
Find out how you can make a difference. Go to fairfoodprogram.org.
Santiago, the farm worker who was speaking, says there's more to be done. What more is there to be done? We have 12 corporations who have now signed the Fair Food Agreement, and they are joining with the farm workers and 90% of the growers in Florida's fields to make this program work. Millions of dollars have been paid to the farm workers that would not have been paid. Average farm worker pay without the program is about $3.50 an hour, with 14 hours from door to door, because they have to sit and wait for the tomatoes to dry if they're working for a grower that doesn't participate. If they're working for a grower that does participate, they get paid minimum wage and they get paid for every hour on the clock.
Las mujeres que estamos aquí debemos de sentirnos orgullosas de caminar, de marchar, de pedir justicia, de pedir respeto para nuestras familias, para nuestros hijos, para el futuro. Eso es lo que se está viendo ahora con el programa Por Comida Justa. Muchas mujeres que están sufriendo acoso sexual pueden reportar y decir: yo no quiero sufrir más acoso sexual, yo no quiero seguir sufriendo, humillándome delante de un patrón o un supervisor. Por eso es que estamos aquí luchando y vamos a seguir luchando.
Ahí les dejo mi poesía, mi jarana y mi cantar, mi jarana y mi cantar. Ahí les dejo mi poesía.
En el Día Internacional de las Mujeres se recuerda a aquellas mujeres que lucharon por muchos años para tener voz, que por un momento se pongan a pensar en una mujer que les ha inspirado a ustedes.
Mi nostalgia y mi alegría.
Isabel.
Me asomo por la ventana, miro al sol que ya se va, miro al sol que ya se va.
Esto es por todas las mujeres que he conocido, especialmente a mis hijas y María López Ortiz.
El sol volverá mañana, pero tú no volverás. Me asomo por la ventana, miro al sol que ya se va.
Y vamos a también invitar a Publix, que no ha reconocido que nosotras tenemos derecho, a todos aquellos que se niegan a ver la realidad de las mujeres, a todos aquellos que se niegan, que se cierran los ojos para pedir que vengan a la mesa del diálogo y que se comprometan, porque nosotras también tenemos derechos. Todos somos seres humanos y merecemos respeto.
There's more to be done. What is it to be done? This is where we come in Ohio. Wendy's, one of the 5 top fast food restaurants, has not signed the agreement. They buy a lot of tomatoes from Florida, and the farmers who pick those tomatoes don't get paid. They don't get paid the extra penny, so they're back at $3.50 an hour. We need Wendy's to be part of this program. The other reason Ohio is involved is because when Walmart signed in March, they said, we want this program to come outside Florida and outside tomatoes. Walmart wants the coalition to transform the entire agricultural industry throughout the country. With Ohio's help, we can get Wendy's in the program, and we can get this program expanding beyond Florida and beyond tomatoes. And what we really need from all the UUJO congregations is to endorse the Fair Food Program, to sign a letter to Mr. Brawley and send it to him, and to let the coalition of monthly farm workers know that your congregation is on board with them and on their side. Because the farm workers still go to work every day, and it's still hard, and they don't know how long this program is going to be strong and get stronger. So they need to know that you're behind them. And now we have an action for you right now. If everybody will come up here, we're going to have 3 photos, one for raising the minimum wage, one for Move to Amend, and one for the farm workers, to say, UUJO, Justice Ohio, Justice Assembly members want these things to happen. And you can even do this in your congregation. The movie Food Chains is coming out December 4th in Columbus, December 2nd in Cleveland, and there will probably be demonstrations connected with those events.
Columbus is headquarters for Wendy's.
Make sure you can see the camera.
There you go.
Make it. Yep. Wonderful.
I'm Pam Hatch. I am a member of the North Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Lewis Center. I have been on the steering committee for UUJO. I am now on the board. Nuts and bolts, things that UUJO provides. We have the website, and there is a web page for environmental information. We also have a Facebook page. There's a Google group. And then there are alerts that will go out. So we have it by region, and we also have it by issues. How many people are aware of the Commit to Respond UU initiative? The UUA, the UUSC, the UU College of Social Justice, UU Ministry for Earth are all backing this initiative addressing climate change. Their major objectives are to grow the climate justice movement, to advance human rights of affected communities, and to shift to clean renewable energy. And the actions was the participation in the September People's Climate March in New York. There was a huge contingent there. March in April. They're going to have days of action for climate justice between Water Day and Earth Day. 2015 in June at General Assembly, which is in Portland, the Climate Justice Public Witness. Deb Steele is with the Ohio Interfaith Power and Light, and how they can be a resource to your congregation and any legislation that is coming up or that we need to be aware of related to the environment. Deb's been a passionate advocate and organizer on a variety of issues, from health care to environmental concerns. And for the last decade, she grew up in Minnesota, came to Ohio in the mid-90s. She has her bachelor's in sociology from Ohio State, with a focus on ethnic and minority studies, and she's chosen to stay here because there's a lot of work to do. And after Tuesday, even more. She enjoys learning about all the ways there are to lessen our dependence on fossil fuels, and while educating people along the way. And recently she has been supporting local farmers markets. That is a way to connect to the community. And she's focused on building and strengthening long-term relationships with those who want to support a more sustainable future.
Invited me here to speak with you all. If you're from the Columbus area, I'm sure we have hung out at the State House together at some point, protesting or supporting something. But before we're done, I'd like to take a group photo of us. We just need somebody to write out Act on Climate, the hashtag. Has anybody already done this photo petition thing, Act on Climate? Okay, well, we'll all do it together when this is done. It's important every time we talk about this issue of climate change to be sure we're pausing and taking action, because I found it to be a pretty depressing issue, and I don't like to overwhelm you with information. I do not talk about polar bears eating each other anymore because it's really deflating. But what I've learned through working with Ohio Interfaith Power and Light is there's so much we can do. There's so much that is already happening. Is it enough? Is it in enough time? I don't know. I don't know. But I do not do myself any good worrying about tipping points and getting depressed about polar bears eating each other. Inconvenient truth was like going to a funeral for me. It really depressed me for 2 years, and that's not a motivating place to be. So when we talk about hope, that's somewhat motivating. So what I'm pretty honed in on is changing policy within our places of worship, changing policy within my house. I went to the Pt2's website, apples to apples. I found wind power, 8 cents a kilowatt. I locked in for 24 months at that rate. Now my house is 100% powered by wind. I don't own the windmills. Maybe someday I'll be able to get residential solar on my house. I did throw a bunch of money into a plug-in Prius, and now when I plug it into my house, it's being powered by wind power, not the coal-fired power plants down in Meigs County. So when I say that is to be sure to temper yourself with this issue. Do not get bogged down and get depressed. There is simply too much to do to get depressed. Local food is an awesome way to lower our carbon footprint. It's good for other Ohioans, and it's better for your body. When you're eating tomatoes and carrots that fought the toxins in your community, it's going to help your body fight those toxins as well. And this stat is a little old, but the average carrot has traveled 2,000 miles before it hits the average United States citizen's plate. One of the biggest ways our nation consumes fossil fuels is in the food industry. So you already shop at farmers markets. Some of you probably already have raised garden beds at home. And this is awesome and wonderful. And we should get together and do potlucks and celebrate this stuff, because we need it to keep going up this mountain. So before we leave, we'll do this group pick about Act on Climate. The federal EPA regs are coming down the pike, and so this is part of the effort to make sure our EPA knows we want them to keep the clean air regulations in place. And our state is incredibly important on that effort because we're too dependent on, I think we're 86% powered by coal still in Ohio. Let me talk to you about SB 310, Senate Bill 310. Does it ring a bell for some folks? Did you hear about it? Advocate against it? When I get into what IPL does, the next thing, energy audits, that was all a result, is still a result of our renewable portfolio standard. So far, only First Energy has said they're going to sit out during this study period. But to go back and review what SB 310 is, it froze our existing renewable portfolio standard. Half the states in the country had passed our renewable portfolio standard. It says something like we should reduce our consumption from 2005 numbers by like 20% by 2020. And it's pretty in line with the EPA regs saying 25% by 2025. We're the only state in the nation to freeze that effort. And it hurts me to use their terminology, but the other side calls it a freeze. So we are pausing on mandating that we reduce our consumption, but most energy companies are choosing to continue anyways, because it just is too much paperwork to stop a program that they've been implementing since 2008. Has anybody had a home energy audit? Level 1 home energy audit. Everybody should have a home energy audit. When 310 was passed, which froze our renewable portfolio standard, we found out, there's lots of good polling being done, half of Ohioans didn't know that we had a renewable portfolio standard. If I didn't work for IPL, I might not have known we have a renewable portfolio standard. Right now in your Columbia Gas or AEP bill, if you get that mailed to your house, and a lot of people just pay them automatically online so they don't see their utility bills anymore. You can also go to, assuming you live in Central Ohio, You can go to Columbia Gas or AEP and look up Energy Auditor. And for $25 or $50, somebody will come to your house. It's good to do it when it's really hot or really cold out. And they will spend a few hours at your house. They'll give you a low flow shower head, a new thermostat, and they might help pay for more insulation. And that's having a home level 1 energy audit. And this is where I get back to, we have the power to change our energy policy within our own homes. And next I'll talk about how we do it in places of worship and how that relates to inviting elected officials to your place of worship to show them what you've done as a result of our renewable portfolio standard. And nothing else could better help close this silly frozen period that we're in than showing elected officials, I partook in this good renewable portfolio standard. We got more insulation in my house or my place of worship. Why wouldn't we keep continuing doing this great work? So, schedule a level 1 energy audit, and you can do it within your congregations. If everybody can celebrate, we helped 30 people in this congregation do a home energy audit, that's a big deal. On average, people save 10% after that moving forward. If some of us are having hopes and dreams of having residential solar, you cannot do that without doing an energy audit first, or you really shouldn't. You don't want to put solar panels on a leaky building. So those are the steps. Sometimes we get calls from churches saying, hey, we want to put solar panels on our church. And we go out there and we say, we've got to do an energy audit first. And it's not as exciting as installing solar panels, but it makes sense because you need to know what your payback period is. It's something like in the neighborhood of 8 years right now for residential solar. I live in North Linden. Somebody shot around some numbers, and he thought it would cost me about $18,000 to provide 80% of the power my house needs. So I don't have the $18,000 yet, because of that darn plug-in Prius. If we had better public transit, and I didn't have to have a car, I definitely would be doing residential solar right now. But I don't allow myself to get depressed and beat myself up about that, because again, at least we're aware. Half the folks out there are dealing with the consequences and pretending it's not happening and getting angry when we use the wrong words and say things the wrong way or whatever. We all just do our best to, it's in line with conservative values to support renewables. Now, I'm not a conservative person, but if you see the movie Earth Days, it's a great documentary, I think it was made in 2009, talks about where the evolution, the creation of the environmental movement came from. Happened during this great civil rights thing that I wasn't here during the civil rights era, but there's just as much important work to do. So I'm no longer sad that I wasn't here in 1969. I think things are pretty dynamic right now. So I will go through what we help churches do, energy audits. And we're an interfaith group, but we're pretty Christian heavy. So I try to say place of worship, but sometimes I default to say churches. Won the Battle of the Buildings Award. They reduced their energy consumption the most out of 86 houses of worship that competed across the country. So their energy audit, now I've heard this building has had a level 3 energy audit, I believe. And I've also heard there's a UU church in Cleveland that has solar panels.
Yes.
Hooray, I've not been there myself, but I've seen pictures of it.
Totally self-sufficient.
You're totally off the grid?
It's totally off the grid.
It's amazing. And also in Wisconsin, there's some Catholic churches that have installed solar panels that are powering 4 or 5 other churches. This is awesome and wonderful when you have a faith leader throwing holy water on the solar panel. I'm there taking a picture and we're bragging. And there is, politically, you have no reason to be against that unless you work directly for ExxonMobil. And even in this divestment business, it's getting complicated. BP does invest in solar panels. You know, I mean, I'm not saying these things. The energy audit was $5,800. It was a level 2. It was mostly paid for, and again, that's because of our existing renewable portfolio standard. These are energy conservation measures, and ECM can be as little as putting on a sweater, which the President famously talked about a while ago, to as big as replacing a boiler system. So the energy auditors will come through and say, low and no cost items like caulk the windows, some light bulbs are kind of expensive, but there's a lot of low and no cost things we can do. Same with when you do a level 1 home energy audit, the low flow shower head, or turning off the lowering the thermostat when nobody's in the room. Those are no cost items. But some of them are expensive items. So the ECMs were $42,000. We got a quarter of that rebated. So that church invested almost $32,000 in ECMs. And they're saving, I think, $8,000 a year on their utility bills. So they're in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 years that this will pay for itself, this investment. So that is the nature of this business that I've been learning. I've been with IPL, I'm the volunteer coordinator, and I have some business cards. I've been learning this jargon of energy audits, and they're really important. And again, they make me very happy because we're taking tangible action, because the electoral situation is also pretty depressing right now. So that's one church, and they don't have to implement these programs, but most of them still are.
The rebate.
Yes, doing the audit and the rebates. It's all kind of one and the same. This is Worthington United Methodist down the church. They had a almost $10,000 energy audit, totally covered. They had huge investments. They run a big preschool there. And they got a rebate of $105,000 for doing 335,000 ECMs. And I don't know what their payback period is. I think it's 6 or 8 years. But this is a picture of the old equipment, and this is a picture of the new equipment. And sometimes you have to switch out equipment anyway, so why would you do this? We don't have nice before and after pictures of this one. But similar idea. These audits are pretty expensive, but we're getting them usually totally paid for. And then you can get as little as 10% and up to 50% for doing the ECMs. Windows have a long payback period, but this particular church also had a security problem, so they went with the glass block windows, and it's saving them some amount of money. This is sort of under construction, but when we help a church do an energy audit, they get into portfolio manager, which is administrated by the EPA.
What does ECM mean again, please?
Energy conservation measure. The auditors, we diagnose the building's systems. Like a lot of low-hanging fruit is usually switching out those old light bulbs, the incandescent light bulbs, but they create heat. So if you were to switch out a room full of incandescents, put in LEDs, you have to realize your AC is not going to run as hard now. And the auditors take all of this into calculation. And they're helping make the case there's usually a committee or a board that oversees the finances. Some of them need more help. But you have to justify to the board why we should invest. You know, that one particular church, $335,000. And this isn't getting into renewables. I hope to be able to revisit some of these churches a handful of years from now and start installing solar panels. If that church down in Athens is saving $6,000 a year, 6 or 8 years from now, they should be investing that money into solar panels. But that's for their board to decide, not us, not me. So that is a long spiel about energy audits, but they're really, really important. And I'm putting them under this phrase of changing policy from within the walls that we live in, because we need to show our legislators that they need to change policy at the state level and at the federal level better than they have been. So what IPL is doing, the first quarter of, maybe the first half of 2015, we do a teach-in, preach-in, and act-on. We're calling it a climate conversation. We did this last year from Bird Polar Research Center. I've convinced my org to jump into Google Hangouts. And we broadcast into 3 other cities. So the main camera was happening in Columbus, but we were fed into Cincy, Cleveland, and Dayton. And they listened to Lonnie Thompson speak for about 40 minutes, and then they were able to type us or ask us questions. Lonnie Thompson answered them. This year we're going to be broadcasting from up in MTSO up in Delaware County. They have a goal like growing most of that seminary's food on site. They're doing amazing things there. That's financially beneficial to them as well. Not only are they helping our poor polar bear friends, they're also eating healthier food, creating jobs for local young people. So we're going to broadcast from up there. Jason Servanek, who's with Bird Polar, will do 20 minutes of the Ohio impacts of climate change. But then we'll do a little quick tour of looking at these hoop houses and their sort of beginning of year-round food production. But I do need a Columbus host site if people want to come in and do a sound and mic check before the Google Hangout. Then you can join us for that official night. And the sound and mic check is fun. You get to meet my cat and dog from my house. So that's the climate conversation. Or we can come do an individual presentation to a place of worship as well, if people need more evidence that climate change is happening, which I know you guys know it's happening, but getting our other folks. And there is an enormous power in the religious community responding to this issue. I mean, like, it's just starting. Catherine Hayhoe is an amazing speaker who's married to an evangelical preacher, and I really think it's sort of just beginning. And Faith in Public Life, Amanda Hoyt was here earlier, really love working with her organization, that they've sort of hijacked what it means to have spiritual response to our politics, and we know we stand on the side of justice, so it's not a contest, but let's get out there and brag about our social justice, environmental justice that we're doing, because all religions believe in justice. And we have to act. We're going to take so much time soaking in information, but it's so important to get up and act. So, the pre-chan is mid-February. That's around Valentine's Day weekend. We had 40 faith leaders across Ohio participate last year, and this is where people in the pews need to encourage your faith leader to preach on this issue. And maybe they do already. Most of the religious texts have a lot of information about caring for creation, but this helps in all places of worship. This is something they should do. And then they act on. We'll probably partner with Ohio Environmental Council to do a sort of smaller lobby day. But for folks that live further out, I'm very excited for in-district events. So ideally, the climate conversation is to educate you that there's a problem. The preaching is to inspire you that your religious texts call you to respond to it. So then March and April, we hopefully are taking action and responding to it. And I'm trying to get out ahead of Earth Day. Earth Day is great. We have one of the best volunteer rates in the country in Columbus. But I also get a little sad that sometimes people like plant a tree and kind of wash their hands and call it good. I want to do something much more robust and sort of ahead of Earth Day. So the planting tree ceremony certainly should still happen, but if we can invite your legislator to your place of worship, to your place where you work, you say, we had an energy audit here, we're doing this at home. 221, Senate Bill 221, which passed in 2008, allowed us to do this. This was great. Why would you freeze such a program? And legislators are not used to getting invited into churches to talk about politics. I mean, everything's political. My haircut's political, the food we eat's political. The teach-in always happens either late December or early January. January 22nd worked best for MTSO. Sarah Ward, our director, has presented at the Ohio Council of Churches meetings before. So thinking about the action, taking action, inviting your legislator to your place of worship. For friends that live in Toledo, Akron, Cleveland, I'm hoping that an in-person lobby day would be, again, inviting that elected official in person. We've invited you to the state park to come see our solar panels, whatever it is. But that's still kind of being cooked up. So that is me yammering at you. As far as legislation in lame duck, I mean, I can say at the federal level, we know they're going to push Keystone Pipeline. It's pretty awful, and we should give them the best fight we can. There's a study committee with SB 310, so that is where people will be looking, including our energy companies, are looking into, we invested so much for these energy audits, did they invest in ECMs? And what we're finding is that the churches move slower than for-profit businesses, because people at the places of worship volunteer, and they do eventually get around to implementing the ECMs, they just are taking longer. And so we're sort of slowing down how we do energy audits, and we're asking churches investing some money set aside for implementing the ECMs. We also did a survey at First UCC recently on Broad Street, where we put a survey in the bulletin, and we surveyed the whole congregation about sustainability issues. And we're having members of the congregation follow up with folks who wanted to do a home energy audit. So my degree's in sociology. It's really awesome when we can do measurable things. And it's really different to do a survey in a place of worship, but I'm sure you all know Reverend Tim Aarons is awesome. And UUs, I know, are committed to taking action as well, so you wouldn't be opposed to doing a survey possibly during a service or at the end of a service. So those are the kinds of things we're working on. And I can pass the mic around now to talk about things that are happening in your church. But definitely look into the PUCO website if you haven't about buying wind power. It's called the Apples to Apples. And definitely have a home energy audit if you haven't done so. It's the best way to say the study committee should end and we should bring back our renewable portfolio standard. And I do think that we will win on this issue eventually because the climate crisis is already here and underway. The blue-green algae outbreak is as big as the river burning in Cleveland. So the heavier downfalls and heavier things of rain are making it flush into the waterways more. And if you're switching out your gutters at your house, get bigger gutters. It's a reality. I don't want to be depressed. Get bigger gutters, do rainwater harvesting. I'm ready to help people get arrested for doing rainwater harvesting. It's insane that that's illegal in some states, but I just focus here in Ohio. But that's where we're like on the level of Gandhi with stuff, right? I mean, this is happening. It's happening in pockets, and so it's more about hearing from each other, celebrating that local food. I also forgot to say All Saints, which is just before 270, a Lutheran church. They're going to get Energy Star status after you have an energy audit. If you get a score that's a 75 or above, you can have an Energy Star plaque put on your building. Right now there's only 2 or 3 places of worship in Ohio that have Energy Star status. So All Saints down the street is going to get an Energy Star plaque, and I'm going to make as big of a hoopla as I can about it. So now we can pass around for questions and such.
So Senate Bill 310 says that they're going to study whether this was effective for 2 years. And so at the end of that study, that 2-year period, they can say, we're getting rid of those, clean energy requirements, and what does that put it into? Because I know some of the things, like when I did the energy audit, they'll give you light bulbs, you see the cheaper light bulbs that are sponsored or whatever by AEP, the CFLs and the LEDs, so that's part of the clean energy or the energy efficiency. So what would end if Senate Bill 310 study says, we don't think we want to do this anymore, and what can we do about it?
It also says that by 2025, half of our renewable power should be generated in Ohio. That's also on the line. So if they decide to totally repeal our renewable portfolio standard, energy companies are not paying for energy audits and are not required to reduce their emissions. A legislator, Tracy Hurd, said politicians don't do anything you don't make them do. I mean, you sort of should do. I love half and half, and it's very bad. We're the first state to repeal our renewable portfolio standard. Also with the federal level with the EPA regs. I mean, if we haven't been down to Meigs County to tour coal-fired power plants, you should. Go bear witness. It's a Quaker value. Greenpeace was founded on Quaker values. Go bear witness. That's pretty powerful when you can say to a legislator, I went down to Meigs County. They can't eat deer that they shoot there because they're so riddled with cancer. That's our state, and we can be better than that. I heard that Canada complained about the dirty air, so they just lowered the smokestacks. And Elisa Young is an amazing, wonderful person, and she said to me on the phone, Deb, I don't want these coal plants to go somewhere else. So this is our state, and when I went to the march in New York City, I brought an Ohio flag. And I stayed here because we're the most important state in presidential elections, so brag about it. Use it to our advantage. Any other questions or thoughts about?
So you talked a lot about SB 10 and the freeze. Do we expect that this assembly may actually try to pass something like they did before that actually rolls them back rather than freeze? Or do they think we're just going to stick with this 2-year thing and study?
I think left to their own devices, they being the evil rich companies that are making money off of a broken system, would prefer that we don't have a renewable portfolio standard. And so if we let our politicians look the other way on this issue, they probably would make the RPS go away altogether. I mean, there's this nasty thing afoot that there's no consequences for our actions. And we live in a democracy, so people vote on whose message they like more. And if you put yourself in these political exercises, if you put yourself on the other side and try out their messaging, it's pretty neat that America can be bigger, better, always, hooray. You don't need to put on a sweater. You don't need to sacrifice. There are many depressing realities right now afoot. The #1 reason why kids go to ER in our city is because of breathing problems. Asthma is off the chain. And we can have cleaner air, like when my grandparents grew up and lived into their 90s, and my aunts and uncles haven't lived into their 90s, I think because of environmental things in our state. Now that's pretty depressing. I gotta be pretty careful what I put on the table. But I think that the way that our state is very gerrymandered, they would like to make the renewable portfolio standard go away. But I think Mike Duffy did stand up for the renewable portfolio standard, and that is a Republican state rep from near here. He's a champion. There's also a Republican in the northern state of Ohio, northern part of Ohio, who really wants wind jobs. He sees the importance of wind jobs. And also this war on coal. I'm definitely against coal-fired power plants, but I'm very upset about the hashtag coal is stupid. That does not help our union brothers and sisters. You need coal to make renewables. Where is our trains going to come from? Where are the solar panels made? That guy that I was shooting numbers around with about building solar panels on my house, he lost me as a customer because he was talking about getting Chinese-made solar panels. And I said, no, we're going to be Toledo. When the glass companies left Toledo, they started building solar panels. And most of those solar panels have gone off to Germany. But Ohio has the 4th highest number of green jobs in the nation, even before our RPS was here. This is huge and big and wonderful and in line with Ohioans' values, manufacturing. We can build our energy's future. They want us to be dependent on a few sources of power. That's why the whole nuclear debate is very funny. The 350.org folks, Jim Hansen loves nuclear power. I don't think that's a good solution, but if we can agree that there's a problem, they'll work together. Jim Hansen and the other guy who runs 350.org, they work together to at least try to get the general public to understand there's a problem. Addressing the solution is sort of the next page. And I say anytime that their solution is concentrated sources of power, that's not the right solution. We want a diverse source of power. And that's a big change. The grid wasn't made for us to have many power stations. You might have seen in the front page of the Dispatch last Sunday, the gentleman in Worthington has residential solar, and AEP's crying that, well, but they still have to maintain the grid and the meter, and it's not fair to them. So AEP does have a right to be concerned. The grid wasn't made for all of us to be generating power on site. But we have no choice. I mean, what I'm also inspired by is climate change is here. It takes 1/8 of an inch of ice to break down power lines. So the crisis is here. You can pretend it's not happening, but your energy bills are going to go through the roof. So we've been able to do energy audits in churches that are not environmentalists. And it's been hard for me to change how I talk about this stuff. I know you guys are all environmentalists and understand social justice, but nobody can argue against lowering their utility bills. And so when we're able to get into smaller town churches, and I found preachers that want to preach on this issue, they get the creation care connection. We just have to help them have the political space within their pews to do it.
Famous UUs, Elizabeth Blackwell, Albert Schweitzer. Well,